Well, the World Health Organization is going to pay $250, 250 big ones, to rape victims that they admit that their doctors have abused during the Ebola outbreak. This is the same organization that wants global powers now. This comes from an Associated Press investigation of the WHO's own internal investigation. So just to clarify, the WHO admits that their doctors sexually abused, raped, and all sorts of exploitation of people in the Congo while they were working on the Ebola outbreak. There's no government investigation. There's no international body investigating because the World Health Organization is sovereign. They make their own rules. So they have investigated themselves and decided what is just punishment and what is just settlement for these women. It has nothing to do with any kind of government crime or any kind of formal punishment. Now, during these years of 2018 and 2020, the WHO admits that their staff sexually abused or exploited at least 104 women and men. And as compensation, they have decided that it's totally fair to pay each of these women $250 each. Not per month, not per year, but flat out. Not only that, first, before they do this, they have to go through a training course to help them start income generating activities in order to get this payment, because they have rules around whether or not they'll compensate people that they're hurt, and this would violate their compensation. So they're presenting this as like, go through a training and get some money because we did you wrong. Okay. I mean, just imagine a rape victim getting pennies like this in the U.S. or anywhere else that is not poor Africans. Come on. Now, let's back up and get some context for this story and actually look at their own investigation, because it's horse shit. And I want you to see it for yourself. The WHO received, by its own admissions, at least 287 claims of sexual misconduct during its mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, again, the investigation happened by the WHO, and it was completed in 2021, but we only just got to see it this week. Mostly I'm referring to these victims as women, but the WHO does admit that at least 12 men reported abuse too. So forgive me, I don't want to leave them out at all. But these are mostly stories of women. So what kind of abuse are we talking about here? Well, let's look at this and brace yourself. Here is a story from Nadira saying that in order to get this job, she had to have sex with the person who offered her the job. And when I wanted to complain about my salary not being paid, then she had to have some more sex, and you had to just keep having sex in exchange for something. She says it was very common. I even was offered sex if I wanted to get it. I even offered, but like had to have sex in order to get a basin of water to wash herself in the base camp where they were staying. Like, oh, that's what you want? Look at this next story. I'm just going to summarize. There's Julianne, the youngest, who is 20, right? Says that she was selling phone recharging cords on the side of the road when she was approached by a driver who offered her a ride. Instead, he took her to a hotel where she said she was graped without a G. As a result, she became pregnant, and she had a child, which severely affected her family relationship, she says. Another one, Severin, was 43. A man posing as a WHO employee invited her to meet at this hotel, and told her, well, if you want this job, you'll have to have sex with me. It says that the team was able to establish that the majority of these victims were in a very precarious economic and social situation. Indeed, I'm reading the wrong one. Indeed, some of them just didn't have any money. For example, this one woman said that after she became pregnant, for what she believed was sexual exploitation, her parents stopped funding her education. One other story is this one. In April, a woman who went to the WHO office to say this man, Mr. Jean-Paul Ngandu, accused of making her pregnant. What you don't hear here is that there was never an investigation. She made this accusation it was not followed up upon. And then when finally this investigation happened, the doctor was dismissed and signed a settlement where he offered to buy the girl's land and pay her $100 per month until the baby was born. And again, here is the WHO admitting that, some of these women were so easy to exploit because they had nothing, because they were poor and hungry and had families to support. It says, they were just looking for opportunities and they were extremely vulnerable and they just needed to get a job. And so the sexual exploitation was kind of one of their only options. Like Fantine in Les Miserables, you guys, we have fiction written about how this happens to women. For example, Lima told investigators she had resisted for 2 months this advancement, but finally gave in because she needed money to support her and her 4 children. She said she didn't even dare ask for a condom for fear that he would refuse and then she would be out of a job. The team later admitted in this report that women who were more experienced or had greater economic independence were better able to resist unwanted sexual advances. Duh, right? This is a story among stories like this. Another woman offered a job, and then when she acquiesced, with like, oh, it's tit for tat, literally, she gave in, had the sex, and didn't even get the job. Another woman saying that, they had to submit to sexual abuse to just keep the job. Some women who indicated they were already employed said that they had to continue to be harassed or have all of this sex. Some said they did actually get dismissed if they refused. Now, a summary from all of this was published by the WHO's director, Gaia Gamhewaji. I'm not sure if that's how you say her name. We got publicly this update in October of 2023 on their website. Like, these are our remarks about sexual misconduct. They say that out of the cases filed, only 25% of them were allegations against WHO personnel. And here are their numbers. They say, this many, some are unsubstantiated. We were able to say this, it's kind of like, not all of it was our fault, but some of it. They say some of them were not WHO employees, but they were collaborators, which are like contracts they bring on. And what does this mean to the victims? Like, what are they going to do about it? Well, they say that they have implemented 40% of 50 actions. Like, they have a punch list of what they can do to make sure that this is not going to happen again. Also, guess what? They're hiring a victims and survivor support officer. I wonder how much that person gets paid by the WHO. Do you think that it's more than $250 in total? I'm just curious.
Probably. It's probably like an $80,000 a year position. It's probably like a social work position.
At least $250 per day.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. At least. Go ahead, Philip.
That, and like, who's gonna trust these damn, like, what are they called, like, support officers running around when the whole problem was the WHO orchestrating this to begin with?
Right.
Like, what are they gonna trust the officers now?
Well, I mean,
like, oh, you want your $250? Guess what you have to do for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people don't realize that the WHO, in its founding documents, exempts itself from criminal charges. So as part of its founding documents, they have exemptions from criminal prosecution. Why would they do that? As Dr. David Martin pointed out, he said, the reason they wrote that into their founding documents is because they knew they were already breaking the law. So they don't have to do this.
Right. And so that 250 number, how did they come up with this? Well, according to an Associated Press investigation, the WHO says that the amount covers typical living expenses for less than 4 months in a country where the WHO documents noted people survive on less than $2.15 per day. So they're thinking that the price of rape is about 4 months living expenses. Okay, what do you think of that? What do you think about that? And they say that this amount, they're saying it's less than a singles day of the Associated Press points out that this amount per victim is less than a single day's expense for any UN official working in the Congolese capital. So any of those doctors were getting paid more than this, but the victims get much less. And why do they have to go through this training course first? It says that the payments appear to try to circumvent the UN's stated policy that it doesn't pay reparations by including the money in what it calls a complete package of support. Many of these women still have received nothing. The WHO said in a confidential document that about a third of the known victims were impossible to locate. The WHO said nearly a dozen women declined its offer. And this $26,000 is about 1% of the $2 million that this Survivor Assistance Fund includes. So this has me fuming. And I want to remind you that this is the organization that wants more power through their pandemic treaty, which we've been talking about ad nauseum, and requires us to pay attention to. Almost half of this report that we're talking about right now, the sexual abuse in the Democratic Republic of Congo, half of this report declares how important it was for the WHO to even be there because Ebola was so serious. Now, remember that the pandemic treaty they're trying to pass would give them the chance to move in and declare that they need to be anywhere, including Ebola. So there'd be more potential pandemics with WHO coming in with immunity and impunity to do this to any vulnerable population. Women, men, it doesn't matter. Whoever's poor enough and we can exploit, they have the right. Now, UK MP Andrew Bridgen warned us about this earlier this year when talking about this treaty, talking about how the WHO has diplomatic immunity. Remember this?
The WHO is domiciled in Geneva, and so it has special status. Its employees are exempt from tax, and they and their families all have diplomatic immunity. It is indeed a supranational body, unelected and unaccountable. I think my constituents would fear that.
Unaccountable indeed, right? They don't even have to file taxes to any state. So they can just go around raping. They can do that.
Without criminal prosecution.
Right. Now, one more thing I think worth interesting. Remember a couple days ago when we went over the pandemic treaty, and I said, why is in the pandemic treaty this intention to even out gender imbalance? Remember this, it says that in the pandemic treaty, they're going to address gender disparities. Well, the report on the Ebola sex crimes is partly blamed on the fact that there were just too many men in the field. Here's their report saying, well, you know, this kind of happens when you have these field projects and most of it is men. There's like 75% of the people working there are men, 75% of the leadership, almost 80%. So I guess what they're trying to say is when there are too many men, you get rape, right? That's not the WHO's fault. It's just that that's what men do. If I were a man, which I'm not, I would find that a very sexist argument to counter sexual abuse. It's not our fault. It's just men.
It's just men.
Right.
What can we do about it?
We shouldn't have been expected to do anything if there's this many men. So once again, this is the organization that wants global powers and your government marching forward to give it to them. If you don't want that, it is speak now or forever hold your peace. Let us know what you think of this awful story in the chat below.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.